Ray Cortez had never been a man of extravagance. He didn't need it. He had something more valuable: stability. The kind of stability that only comes from decades of sacrifice, careful planning, and a home to call his own. In 1969, he and his late wife, Maria, purchased a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn's Park Slope for $20,000, an amount that had seemed overwhelming at the time, but was a small price to pay for a future built on solid ground. Back then, Park Slope wasn't the bustling, trendy neighborhood it is today. It was quiet, working class, filled with families like his, trying to carve out a piece of the American dream. Ray had been a hard worker his whole life. A former factory supervisor, he took pride in providing for his family. The brownstone wasn't just a house, it was their legacy. It had seen the laughter of 3 children growing up, the quiet hum of late-night conversations, the smells of Maria's cooking drifting through the hallways. But things had changed. The kids had grown up and moved away. The neighborhood had become a hot commodity, with real estate developers lurking around every corner, eyeing properties like Ray's as golden opportunities. Property values soared, and with them came the unsolicited offers. Realtors, investors, and friendly buyers constantly knocked on his door, eager to convince him to sell. He never considered it. This was his home, his safe haven, the place he and Maria had built together. But at 90 years old, Ray was beginning to feel the weight of time. The house needed work, roof repairs, a new heating system, and fixes to the foundation. His pension and savings were just enough for his daily needs, but not enough for major renovations. That was when a kind stranger appeared at his door, offering help. A man who seemed to have all the answers. A man who would change Ray's life forever. Ray sat in his living room, staring at the letter in his hands. Another contractor had turned him down. The estimate for repairs was staggering, far beyond what he could afford on his fixed income. He sighed and looked around his home. The creaky wooden floors, the slightly leaning bookshelves, the faded wallpaper peeling at the edges. These were not just signs of age, they were reminders that time was slipping away. He had poured his life into this house, but now it seemed to be slipping through his fingers. Then, like clockwork, a knock came at the door. Ray shuffled to answer it, expecting another pushy real estate agent or an eager developer waving cash in his face. But the man standing there wasn't like the others. He was well-dressed, but not flashy. His warm smile and confident demeanor put Ray at ease immediately. He introduced himself as Daniel Vega, a financial consultant who helped seniors maintain their homes. "I've been working in this neighborhood for years," Vega said, stepping inside and looking around. "This house has good bones, Mr. Cortez. It just needs a little love." Ray exhaled in relief. Finally, someone who saw the home the way he did. Vega leaned in slightly. "I know how tough it can be to manage a place like this on your own, but I work with people who specialize in helping retirees like you get the funding they need for home repairs without selling." Ray's interest peaked. "You mean, like a loan?" "Not exactly," Vega replied smoothly. "It's more of an investment, a financial agreement where you get the money you need now, and it's paid back when you decide to sell, or never if you don't. You stay in your home, stress-free." The word sank in like a soothing melody. Stay in his home, stress-free. No more worrying about repairs. "Sounds too good to be true," Ray muttered. Vega chuckled. "I get that a lot, but it's a common program. Just a little paperwork, and we take care of the rest." Paperwork. The one thing Ray had never liked dealing with. Vega seemed to sense his hesitation. "No rush. I'll leave my card. Take your time. Talk to your family." He smiled warmly. "I just want to help." Ray felt a weight lift from his chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was the solution he had been hoping for. Ray sat at his kitchen table, Vega's business card resting beside a steaming cup of coffee. He had always been careful with money, never one to take risks or jump into something without thinking. But Vega's offer had planted a seed in his mind. For the next few days, Ray weighed his options. His children lived out of state, busy with their own lives. He hated the thought of burdening them with his problems. He had always prided himself on handling things on his own. Finally, after much deliberation, he called Vega. Mr. Cortez, I was hoping to hear from you. Vega's voice rang with enthusiasm. A meeting was set. The next afternoon, Vega arrived at the house with a folder of documents, his reassuring smile ever present. He took a seat across from Ray and placed the papers in front of him. This is just a standard agreement, Vega explained, flipping through the pages. It allows us to secure the funding for your home repairs. Everything stays in your name. Ray nodded, squinting at the fine print. The legal jargon made his head spin. Vega pointed to a section. See? This just says you'll have access to up to $100,000 for repairs. No upfront costs. The repayment only happens later, if you ever choose to sell. Ray hesitated. And if I don't sell? Vega smiled, almost amused. Then you stay in your home, and everything is handled. Simple as that. It sounded reasonable, logical even. Ray glanced at the papers again. The words blurred together. He had always trusted people. Maybe too much. Vega pulled out a pen and slid it across the table. Just a signature here, and we can get started. Ray hesitated for only a moment before picking up the pen. He signed. Vega smiled wider. Great choice, Mr. Cortez. I'll take care of everything from here. As Vega gathered the documents, Ray felt an unexpected wave of relief. For the first time in years, he wouldn't have to worry about the house falling apart. But as Vega walked out the door, a strange uneasiness settled in his gut. Something about the way Vega had been so eager, so smooth. It was only a flicker of doubt, a fleeting moment. Ray brushed it aside. After all, he had done the right thing. Hadn't he? Weeks passed, and at first everything seemed normal. Ray went about his days as usual, waiting for the promised home repairs to begin. Vega had assured him that the process would move quickly. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing happened. No contractors came, no renovations began. Ray called Vega's number, no answer. He left a voicemail, then another, and another. The polite patience in his voice slowly turned to frustration. One afternoon, fed up, he decided to visit Vega's office himself. He took the bus to the address printed on Vega's business card, a small building in a quiet part of Brooklyn. When he arrived, his stomach dropped. The office was empty. Not just closed, empty. The windows were covered with dust, the door locked, and a for lease sign was taped to the glass. Ray's chest tightened. He knocked anyway. Nothing. A woman passing by noticed him staring at the door. You looking for someone? She asked. Yes, Ray said, his voice tight. A man named Daniel Vega. He worked here. She shook her head. That place has been empty for months. Ray's heart pounded. Months? That wasn't possible. He turned away and walked back toward the bus stop, his mind racing. Maybe Vega had moved offices. Maybe he was just busy. But deep down, an icy realization crept over him. Something was very, very wrong. That night, Ray couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment he signed those papers. The way Vega had been so confident, so convincing. He shuffled to the kitchen and pulled open a drawer where he had kept the paperwork. As he flipped through the pages, his fingers trembled. And then he saw it. A section he had skimmed over before, written in tiny, almost unreadable print. The undersigned agrees to transfer all ownership rights to the property upon execution of this agreement. Ray's breath caught in his throat. His hands shook. No. He read it again and again. The house, his house, was no longer his. It belonged to them now, and he had signed it away. Ray's hands trembled as he clutched the papers, his mind racing. He had been tricked, deceived. His home, the place he had built with Maria, the place where his children had grown up, was no longer his. How could he have been so blind? A mix of anger and panic swelled in his chest. He needed answers. He needed help. The next morning, he made his way to City Hall, navigating the endless hallways until he reached the property records office. The clerk, a young woman with tired eyes, pulled up the file on his brownstone. Her expression darkened as she scanned the screen. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, her voice hesitant. According to these records, the property was transferred almost a year ago. Ray's breath hitched. A year ago? The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Vega hadn't just disappeared. He had been gone long before Ray even noticed. How is that possible? Ray asked, gripping the edge of the counter. I'm still living there. I never sold my home. The woman hesitated before lowering her voice. This looks like deed theft. It happens more than people realize, especially in areas where property values have skyrocketed. Ray's head swam. Deed theft. The words felt foreign, unreal. How could someone just take his house? The clerk sighed. You'll need to file a report with the district attorney's office, but I have to warn you. She hesitated. These cases are hard to fight, and if the property was resold, things get even more complicated. Ray's stomach churned. If the property had been sold, that meant he could be evicted. A chill ran down his spine. He had to move fast. That afternoon, Ray visited the Brooklyn District Attorney's office. He sat across from an investigator who took notes as he spoke, his face impassive. This isn't the first time we've seen this, the investigator said, flipping through the paperwork. Scammers target seniors, trick them into signing paperwork they don't fully understand, and before they know it, their homes are gone. Ray's heart pounded. Can you help me? The investigator exhaled slowly. We'll look into it, but these cases are difficult. The person who scammed you, he probably used fake credentials. If the property's been resold, the new owner might claim they bought it legally. It's a mess. Ray clenched his fists. So what am I supposed to do? Just walk away? The investigator didn't answer right away. He leaned back, studying Ray. There's one thing you can do, he finally said. Fight it, but you'll need a lawyer, a good one. Ray swallowed hard. He had never stepped foot in a courtroom, never needed to. But this was his home, his life. And if they thought he would just give up, they were dead wrong. Ray had always been a man of quiet strength, never one to stir up trouble. But this time, trouble had come knocking at his door, and he refused to back down. Armed with a folder of documents and a determination he hadn't felt in years, he walked into a law office recommended by the investigator. The attorney, Lisa Monroe, was sharp, young, and most importantly, angry. This is disgusting, she muttered, flipping through the pages of his case. They targeted you because they thought you wouldn't fight back. Ray clenched his jaw. Well, they were wrong. Lisa leaned forward. We're going to challenge this, but I need you to prepare yourself. This won't be easy. Whoever has your home now, they're going to fight to keep it. Ray nodded. He didn't care how long it took. This was his house. The battle began. Lisa filed a fraud complaint with the Brooklyn Supreme Court. The case went public and news outlets picked up the story. Suddenly, Ray wasn't alone anymore. His neighbors rallied around him. Protesters gathered outside the court. Activists against deed theft used his case as a rallying cry, calling for stronger protections for elderly homeowners. And then, the worst happened. One morning, Ray woke up to an eviction notice pinned to his door. The new owner of his home, an investment firm that had purchased it after Vega's scam, wanted him out. Lisa fought back in court. She filed an emergency motion to pause the eviction, arguing that Ray had been a victim of fraud and still had legal rights to his home. The legal battle dragged on for months. The investment firm refused to back down, claiming they had purchased the property fairly. They had expensive lawyers, deep pockets, and every legal loophole in their arsenal. Ray had Lisa, and Lisa was relentless. The courtroom was packed on the final day of the hearing. Ray sat beside Lisa as she presented their final argument. This isn't just about a house, she said, her voice unwavering. This is about a man who built a life, who raised a family in a home he rightfully purchased decades ago. He was deceived, robbed, and left to fight a battle he never should have had to face. The judge listened, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to the investment firm's lawyers. What do you have to say for yourselves? They scrambled for words. The pressure was on, and then the decision came down. The judge ruled in Ray's favor. The deed transfer was declared fraudulent. Ray's eviction was overturned. And just like that, he had won. That night, Ray sat in his living room staring at the walls that had held his life for over 50 years. He had almost lost it all, but he hadn't. Because he had fought. Because he had refused to be another silent victim. The news reports called him a symbol of resilience, a man who had taken on the system and won. His case helped bring attention to deed theft scams, leading to new laws protecting elderly homeowners from fraud.